Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I am talking about The Bucket List by Mark Towse and Chisto Healy. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing Mark's name correctly. This is from Evil Cookie Publishing, and this is about Beatrice's bed and breakfast. But it's being run by Marge and Albie, an old couple, and there's a couple of couples. There's a lot of couples in this book. On a dark and stormy night, there's an older couple, retired gentleman and his wife, who they're going on their second honeymoon kind of thing. They have reservations at a hotel, but this storm throws them off track, and they end up at the bed and breakfast. And meanwhile, there's a very young couple. I believe they're engaged, and they have actually made reservations at the bed and breakfast. The storm causes some problems, but they do make it. So we've got this older couple, younger couple, staying at the bed and breakfast, which is run by Marge and Albie, and craziness ensues. This is going to be a difficult one to talk about because I don't want to give anything away. So you know what? Let's see. We're going to blame the publisher because I'm going to read the back cover copy. A raging storm at a bed and breakfast off the beaten path. Three couples looking to cross things off their bucket lists. A night of puns, quips, and brutal violence, hosted by the sweet, mad, elderly couple, Marge and Albie. If you're a fan of horror comedy, give this one a go and cross it off your bucket list. But be warned, there will be blood. Buckets of it. So there you go. That's the back cover copy. So, for the too long didn't watch crowd, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked this book. It is very well written with very interesting characters and some very funny stuff that happens and some very horrific stuff that happens. I can't go into too many details because I don't want to give anything away that hasn't already been given away by the back cover copy. Excuse me, I'm getting a dry throat, and so I must take a drink. Just a little bit to soothe my throat. This is the 5th video of the evening. All right, so as I said before, we meet Marge and Albie first, I believe, at the bed and breakfast. Then we meet the older couple, and they get to the bed and breakfast, and we see them interacting with Marge and Albie. And then we meet the younger couple. They eventually get to the bed and breakfast. We see them interact with Marge and Albie, and then at dinner time, we see all 6 people interacting together. And this is when things really start to get crazy. There are a few bizarre things that happen earlier in the interactions, and I think the thing that makes this book what it is Marge and Albie. The way their characters are written, the way their characters behave, the way this old couple, the chemistry between the two of them. The other couples have great chemistry as well. And it is interesting to see. It's almost like the three, the what is it? The maiden, the mother, and the crone. The crone, the maid. The three. You know what I'm talking about. We have the old couple. Then we have the couple that's 60-ish. And then we have the couple that's in their early 20s. And seeing how each couple within themselves interact and behave, and then how they interact with each other is really interesting. And of course, it all just kicks off and gets crazy and bloody and violent and just a lot of fun. I think this is going to be very short. There isn't much for me to say about this. I don't know that I have read either of these authors before, unless, I say this a lot, unless they're in an anthology that I've read. which is always possible. But I know that Kaylee Dobbs of Happy People Go Horror really enjoys this book. She's often singing the praises of Mark Towse, or however you say his name. I don't know what she thinks of Chisto Healy, but I do have another Mark Towse book on my wish list. It's been there for a while, but I finally decided to pick this one up. Obviously, it's the one that I haven't read. But I'll definitely be reading more from Mark Towse, at least the one that's on my wish list. I'll see what else Chisto Healy has. We'll see. I can't read everything, people, but if the quality of their work is the same as it is here, I'd be happy to read some of their other stuff. So, well-paced, funny, horrific, interesting characters. I really don't know what else to say about The Bucket List by Mark Towse and Chisto Healy from Evil Cookie Publishing. 4 out of 5 stars. A really good time. I read it in half a day. It's a very quick read. And it was a lot of fun. It's like watching a nice low budget grade B horror movie. The kind of horror movie that I really like. None of that slick, fancy, high budget horror filled with CGI. Let's go back to old John Carpenter, old Friday the 13th, old Nightmare on Elm Street, or something Eli Roth, old Eli Roth, that kind of stuff. I know there are people, Eli Roth, controversial. I like Cabin Fever. I like Hostel. Anyway, I'm just trying to make this thing more than 5 minutes long. That is that. Recommendations. Oh, I really need to think ahead when it comes to these things. I'm trying to think of isolation horror. So I suppose, I think I've mentioned this before in another recommendation that may have had to do with isolation horror. Psycho. I think Psycho kind of fits this. Psycho's actually not complete isolation horror, but it's a fantastic book. Just as enjoyable if you've seen the movie. I mean, everybody knows what happens at one point. Everybody knows the big twist. Not literally everybody, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, Psycho, nice isolation horror. Old John Carpenter movies. Or Cabin Fever. Because almost everything takes place at the bed and breakfast is what I'm saying here. But I did not think ahead. Question. How about question for this video? Do you enjoy isolation horror? Horror that all or mostly takes place in one location. Again, it seems to be something that John Carpenter very much enjoys. Assault on Precinct 13, The Fog, slightly larger location, it's a whole town, but they're all trapped by this fog. What was The Thing? Obviously, John Carpenter's The Thing. And essentially, Ghosts of Mars is kind of just Assault on Precinct 13 in space. Prince of Darkness. They're all trapped in that church. It is a church, right? I love that movie. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of isolation horror. And there's even there's a couple Mars Attacks novels, and one of those, if I remember correctly, I only read them when they first came out. One of those is isolation horror. These people trapped inside a house. I feel like it's almost like the Winchester house, with doors that lead nowhere, stairs that lead nowhere. It's been a long time since I read it, but I think they're trapped in the house with the invading Martians coming. I may have to reread that, but I enjoy that. I like that there's no you're trapped and there's no place for you to go, and you're under threat by something. What about you? Do you like that sort of thing? Is it not your cup of tea? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know of any books or movies that I didn't mention that fall under this, if you can think of any. And the smaller the area, the better. As I said, the fog is basically the town. Assault on Precinct 13 is the precinct. The entire movie doesn't take place there, but the majority of it does. That's where the assault is. Which is why I didn't put Halloween on this list, because it's not quite as much isolation horror. It is by the end, but there's so much more. The movie is much more expansive, surprisingly, than something like The Fog or The Thing. Again, The Thing is the perfect example. Or Assault on Precinct 13, or even Ghosts of Mars, or Prince of Darkness. And I'm sure there are plenty of books that I'm just not thinking of. But let me know what you think about it. If you have any other suggestions, let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have the links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. And that's all I've got. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith. Until next time, read more books.